how I managed to balance my hormones naturally. So I feel like hormonal imbalances are something that is so common amongst women, and I feel like it's not always that spoken about, and also practical tips I feel like I found really difficult to share, and I kind of wish I had a video like this just to listen to someone else's experience and just some practical things and steps that I could take naturally that would have really helped me a few years ago when I first found out I had a hormonal imbalance. And I found it really overwhelming. I feel like, it can be quite stressful, overwhelming on a whole, and that is exactly what the purpose of this video is. I just want to share a little bit more about your hormonal journey and things that have really helped me along my journey, and small things that you can start doing today to really help become a more balanced version of yourself. I do want to start and just disclaim this video, I'm not a doctor or a hormone specialist. I'm just sharing my experience and what has really worked for me. I also wanted to share more on this because I've seen this inside my Flonus Club community and also in some of my YouTube comments around certain foods, and I've kind of touched on hormones briefly in some of my YouTube content. So hormone imbalances do come with a range of symptoms, and I feel like some of us can have the odd one or like a couple, or even some of us can have literally every single one. So some symptoms are low libido, so low sex drive. I don't know why I started with that one, but here we go. Acne and skin problems, insomnia, and just struggle with sleep in general, mood swings, and then really heavy and painful periods. Like, there's some symptoms of hormonal imbalance. For me, I had the acne, and I'd say I struggled with increased hunger quite a bit and some mood swings, and then some excessive hair growth like on my chin, and you can get hair in other areas as well. I never really had kind of like clumps of hair. It was just like the odd long hair in random kind of places. And if you're wondering like, what is the purpose of hormones? So hormones are your body's chemical messengers. They're produced in the endocrine glands, and they control many of our body's major processes. So they are in control of our metabolism, our reproduction system, and when they're out of balance, it can feel like you're doing everything right. So say you're someone you're on it with your nutrition, you're active, you eat really well, you're sleeping really well, and you feel like there's just something not quite right. Like, a lot of the time it can be a hormonal imbalance, and that is the missing link. So if I take it back to 2021, which is when I really knew something was definitely amiss. I feel like I had symptoms when I was younger, but I don't know whether the pill made things worse, and I just kind of didn't really address certain things properly, or like I'd gone to the doctors and they just said, right, just go on a contraceptive pill. And I really see the pill as it's a total mask. So it's kind of like, imagine you've got a crack in a wall and then you're just papering over it with wallpaper. Like, that crack is still going to be there if it's not addressed, because the pill is synthetic hormones. Even if you think, oh, I'm on the pill but I'm having a period every month, like I've got regular periods, and before I was on the pill I didn't used to have regular periods, say, like, that is a synthetic period and not like a true period, which is something I didn't really know when I was on the pill, and what I really wish I did know. But in 2021, I went for a blood test and came back with slightly high testosterone result. Everything else was normal. And then I went and had an ultrasound on my ovaries, and they saw there were some ovarian cysts. And at the time I thought, right, does that mean I'm infertile? Like, what does this mean? I've never heard of this before. And there wasn't much information out there. They just said, oh, they might go away. Just, you'll have to come back in a few weeks, or I think it was a couple months, for another ultrasound to see if the cysts have gone. So I remember like getting in my car that day, just crying my eyes out, because I was like, what is this thing? Like, my mum wasn't here as well, because the doctor had said, oh, like, a lot of the time it can be hereditary, as well as like lifestyle, or there's lots of different causes like stress, a whole heap of things. I went away, did a bit of my own research, just gathered more of an understanding, and saw, right, I definitely need to make some lifestyle changes at the time. And then also I'd booked for another ultrasound to follow up, and when I went for the second ultrasound, all the cysts had cleared on my ovaries. Some people can get super enlarged, like golf ball kind of sized ones, and then they're the ones that you like monitor and sometimes have to remove. And what's interesting as well with like cysts on your ovaries, so I've got my notes here by the way, because I didn't want to get any of this wrong. Like, this is based on my own research and understanding, but I had a follow-up ultrasound within a couple of months after this initial ultrasound. This is where they see if the cyst has resolved on its own. Cysts typically go away on their own within 8 to 12 weeks. Some research that I found that was super interesting and just blew my mind a little bit, because I didn't know it was that common, but between 5 and 26% of women of reproductive age can have polycystic ovary syndrome, and in the UK it's thought to affect 1 in 10 women, but more than half of these women don't have any symptoms. And then worldwide, up to 70% of women with PCOS remain undiagnosed, which is just wild. And basically, when you do a blood test for PCOS, they measure your pituitary, adrenal and thyroid hormones, cholesterol and blood sugar, just obviously blood tests can't confirm a PCOS diagnosis on their own, but obviously the ultrasound combined with the blood test that shows, say, multiple ovarian cysts is like the main diagnostic. If you're someone who has been diagnosed with it and you also had like that panic that I initially had, I just want to remind you, like, it's more common than you think. Like my stepsister, she has PCOS and she's got a beautiful little baby boy, and it's more common. Like, don't panic thinking you're going to be infertile, because I know a lot of PCOS women who have had no problems with getting pregnant. And then following on, so I've done blood tests obviously since then, and all my levels have been normal and I've had no inflammation markers, and this is from the lifestyle changes that I've made and diet changes, everything. And that is exactly why I want to share these 4 things that have totally changed my hormonal health. God, I've got the notes I have for this video are making me laugh because I've gone in. I felt like I just want to get this off my chest. So the first thing was changing my nutrition, and I'd say this was probably the most important one, because at the time, so 2021, I'd say I was thinking I was eating healthy and had good understanding obviously around food and nutrition, but I was eating a lot of ultra processed foods without realizing, to be honest. Like, I had a lot of regular diet Coke Zero drinks. I'd sometimes have 2 a day of those, a lot of protein bars, processed foods. They have been made with additives, with colors, with gums, flavors, emulsifiers, and they often have a lot of higher saturated fat, added sugars. And when I actually look back, I also used to have quite a lot of ready to heat meals. So it was mainly vegetables, and this is what I mean, how like sometimes you can think, oh, I'm being like, say, healthy or whatever, but if every single portion of veg you have is like from a microwavable one, you know, it's much better having fresh food, things like lean meats. And again, something else I changed was, rather than having like processed, what I'd buy is like, you know, the beef burgers that are already ready made, I just get them for ease. Whereas it's such an easy switch to just say, if you want to make a beef burger, rather than buying something that's already been processed and added to, you can just make your own beef burgers, like by buying, say, the mince yourself and then adding your own additions to that. And this was a gradual thing. Like, I'm not going to say it was something that I just switched out of. It was just gathering more of an understanding, making small little swaps and changes that go a long way, looking into what is actually in my food. So a lot of things like almond milk that I was having had so much emulsifiers in, they had vegetable oils. So just trying to get things as close as possible to the actual natural ingredients. So now when I get my almond milk, I try and get it with minimal ingredients. For example, Plenish almond milk has a lot less added ingredients, and just having that awareness goes a really long way with your nutrition. And also eating a lot more regular meals, so that helped with just stabilizing my glucose levels and my blood sugar levels and maintaining my energy with my nutrition. At the time, I feel like I did a lot more intermittent fasting, so I would have long periods of time where I wouldn't be, say, if it was in the morning, I'd go and train, have a coffee and an empty stomach, and obviously you're just kind of entering this roller coaster. Whereas now I eat a lot more regularly and often, so I feel much more stable with my energy levels, and I feel like I'm less stressed in my body from just making that change. I also had fewer processed carbs, and this is what helps stabilize your blood glucose levels and improve insulin sensitivity, and this is crucial for hormone balance. And also I wanted to mention, if you are not already a part of the Floners Club, this is my community where I share my workout programs, my recipes, and it's a place where we can all connect. I also have weekly calls where we just go through any questions that you have, and monthly challenges, which is super exciting, where we address things, we go through things in a lot more depth on there. And we're also doing accountability, so on a daily basis we do check-ins at the minute, which is something we'll be doing moving forward. So I would love you to be part of the Floners Club and see you inside there. Second thing has been reducing stress and improving sleep. I feel like these two go so closely together, which is why I've like included them in one point, because usually when our stress is increased, it's almost always down to not getting enough sleep. And what I found I was doing was like, oh, I feel like I sleep quite well, but I kind of looked at like, right, when do I go to bed? So I think I'd get into bed at say 11 o'clock at night, and then my alarm would be set for 6 a.m. And when I actually calculated, by the time I've actually gotten to sleep, which is probably like midnight, sometimes it'd be later if I'd be on my phone, I've not even given myself like 7 full hours in bed. Like, when you actually take into consideration like how long does it take to get to sleep and whatnot, and just giving myself a sleep schedule, which can sound like, it sounds a bit of a funny thing, doesn't it, giving yourself a sleep schedule like you're a child, but honestly I think that just makes the biggest difference. Like, you need to be making sure you're getting minimum you really could do with getting 7 hours sleep a night, or 7 to 8 hours. I do struggle to get 8, I must admit, and I do think we're all different to an extent, but I feel like anything under 7 is going to make a big difference and big impact on your hormones, just how you feel energetically throughout your day as well. And you can really feel it, like even one bad night's sleep, like you feel that bit groggier. Like I always tend to find I'm much hungrier, like my hormone levels, I can feel it even after just one bad night's sleep. So what I've done is, rather than setting my morning alarm, I've taken it right back to like my evening routine and making sure that I'm in bed for a good hour before I actually want to fall asleep, and that I've got definitely like 7 hours that I can actually sleep, and then wearing my Whoop band to actually track my sleep, to track my sleep quality. And then I've invested in my bedroom. I've got some blackout blinds because in the summer months it's so much lighter, isn't it? So it can be harder to fall asleep, especially I would find that a lot, like when it's light outside, I don't get to sleep, and it's definitely harder in the summer months to maintain a sleep routine. Also, I found saying no to more and getting comfortable with saying no and just being true to your authentic self, I think really helps with reducing stress, which I was the person that would just say yes to everything because I didn't want to like miss out. I'd get a lot of FOMO around like social events, so I'd just say yes to everything and then end up stretching myself too thin and just feel like I was running around like a headless chicken. Whereas now I'm like, no, I need my priorities in order, so making sure I'm organized with my time. Like I know this might not seem relative to hormones, but it's so connected because everything should be addressed like holistically and it all goes hand in hand together. So for me, a big one of reducing my stress has been managing my time better. So like I say, each day having a prioritized list with 3 things that will move the needle the most and make the most difference to your day just is a life changer, because you're not focusing on the fluff. And then what I have done consistently is consistent meditation and journaling, which that has just rewired my brain on just how I view everything. I feel like I'm a much calmer person and I can regulate my emotions, which means I can regulate my nervous system a lot better than I used to do. I find I'm not as like reactive in frustrating situations, and that is all down to taking the time to connect with myself, like through meditation, and exactly why I feel like you should meditate and make it a consistent routine. Just start with 2 minutes a day, even if it's just listening to a 2-minute meditation sound and just concentrating on your breathing. It's scientifically proven to literally rewire your brain and to help with your thought patterns and just how you view things and reduce stress levels. So they're my favorite de-stressors. So third one has been minimizing toxins in my environment, and just want to mention the word minimize. So you could go on and you could go crazy with this one, like with just getting rid of absolutely everything, not having any form of fragrance or whatever, just be a very restrictive life and you wouldn't be able to do very much. So I have just done like what I can and done simple swaps that just can go a long way. So first one for me was stopping using my Teflon pans and non-stick pans. Like I say, sometimes if you're in an Airbnb, like what can you do? But I will never use a Teflon pan if it's been, say, scratched. Teflon is a brand, but it's also what is used to coat a lot of these non-stick pans, and it's basically a layer. And the issue is whenever you scratch, say like if there's a scratch on a Teflon pan, it can release thousands of microplastics into your food, which are basically impossible to break down in your body and in any other thing. So stainless steel pans are free from harmful chemicals like PFOA, PTFE, which is found in traditional, say, non-stick cookware. So that is something that I've changed because I don't want to be ingesting like just the thought of that, all the microplastics is a little bit gross, and just doing my bit where I can. So like I say, just addressing, I used to cook a lot of microwavable packet rices in the microwave in plastic, and just trying to not heat things in plastic as much as I physically possibly can. So I swapped all my meal prep containers from plastic to glass meal prep containers. Obviously you can't totally get away from plastic because it's what our food comes, like our chicken breast comes in plastic. Synthetic chemicals that are in plastic can mimic hormones and disrupt your endocrine function. You can go to lots of different lengths, but I don't want to go too much into all of that in this one. Fourth one is I've reduced my caffeine intake, and I can feel you glaring at me through the screen because I know you don't want to hear this either. I didn't want to hear this, but it's a big thing for disrupting your hormones if you are having a lot of caffeine. And I really want to just share something because I didn't know this either, but basically looking at your actual caffeine intake, which is something I didn't address for years because I was like, oh, I only have 2 coffees a day. But where are those coffees coming from? If you're getting them from like a Costa or Cafe Nero, you're out for work or whatever and you're having 2 of those coffees and also maybe 1 at work, you could be having like 600 milligrams of caffeine. So caffeine blocks the adenosine receptors. These are the calming hormone, and caffeine can increase our dual stress hormones. So these are in charge of elevating both our blood pressure and our heart rates. And when these hormone levels are increased, blood vessels are restricted, which can cause tension. Caffeine can cause increased cortisol levels and lead to other health issues. So things like a lot of moodiness, dizziness, like when you're having a lot of caffeine. General guidelines state 4 coffees a day, but it's not very clear on like different caffeine content is in different, say if you have like a coffee at home, like an instant coffee, or if you're having a coffee from an espresso machine, that could be a double espresso without you realizing. And then, do you know, you can see how it like can add up. And what I found most interesting is sometimes in like a coffee that you can get from Costa or somewhere like that, so say like a large Americano, will have more caffeine in than like a Monster energy drink or like some form of energy drink, which is just wild because you wouldn't really think that. So the guideline is 400 milligrams per day, but this is quite unique. So I find 300 milligrams is usually my limit, that if I have any more than that, I'm kind of like jittery and I get super anxious. And if you're also finding that you're just quite anxious on a whole, because I went through a stage of thinking, God, I'm like really anxious and I feel like I'm suffering with anxiety, and it was just the caffeine. Are you anxious, or is it just the coffee? Can that coffee be swapped for a herbal tea, something like a peppermint tea, a chamomile tea that is super calming? So I got some high street coffee caffeine levels, which vary massively. So in a cappuccino, Caffeine Nero has got 110 to 115. Costa has got 325 milligrams of caffeine. So can you imagine if you already had 2 coffees and then you've got another Costa on top of that, and the average guideline is like max 400 milligrams. Like you've already had like nearly 700 milligrams of caffeine, which would just make you so jittery. Greg's has got 197 milligrams, Pret 180 milligrams, and then Starbucks 66 milligrams. I'm not sure 100% how accurate these are, but it's just super interesting. And the same for espressos, so they vary so much. So just having a look at your caffeine content, and also say if you do have the Nespresso machine at home, like I actually found like there's a Bianco Doppio, which is like a slightly smaller coffee, and then the other one is a Malesio, and I like the Malesio because you get a full coffee cup, not just an espresso shot, because sometimes I don't want to fill it up totally with milk, like the little Nespresso shot. One of those just makes me very jittery, so I now half it. And just monitoring how you feel with your caffeine content, because this is going to really affect, like I say, your hormones, and then also how you sleep. So it all kind of like has a snowball effect. Like if you're having 3-4 coffees and you still feel like it's in your system when you get into bed, it's going to affect your sleep, and of course affect your stress. So then you're sleeping less, and then you're more likely the next day to have more caffeine because you're feeling tired from not being able to sleep, and it's like a continuous thing that's really hard to break out of. So I'd also recommend having a caffeine break if you do feel like it's just got a little bit out of control and you can't go without a coffee. So they are 4 things that have helped me the most with being able to balance my hormones. And since I've done more blood tests, I've had super good results back and haven't had any high testosterone since. So I would definitely say this is from a lot of the lifestyle changes, and of course nutrition, the whole works. It's all kind of goes hand in hand together. And I hope this video has been useful for you and you've enjoyed this one. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.